Let's do something else with this big feeling that you have that's really uncomfortable and painful for you. Main form of emotional abandonment is emotional invalidation. Being told you're too much, your feelings are too much, being rejected or punished if you showed up with a lot of emotions, or just feeling rejected. Prime motivator of someone with an anxious attachment in their relationship is close the distance. Close the emotional distance, fix problems. Whereas someone with an avoidant attachment, it's ignore problems and just keep things stable. Don't rock the boat.
Sometimes people enjoy being in a toxic relationship,
It's less about enjoying and it's more about trying to connect in the only way that they know how. It's better to fight than it is to feel alone and disconnected.
Julie Mennano is not only a licensed marriage and family therapist, but also an expert in emotionally focused therapy for couples.
Hailing from the picturesque town of Bozeman, Montana, Julie not only balances her professional endeavors, but also cherishes her role as a loving wife and mother to 6 wonderful children.
Everything comes from an emotionally supportive, all the good stuff comes from an emotionally supportive relationship. Cooperation, the ability to solve problems together, the ability to navigate conflict. The work that you can do before you go into a relationship is really a lot of self-work. There are people who have an anxious avoidant dynamic that have been married for 80 years and somehow they get by.
The Avenue of the Strongest is a podcast dedicated to exploring the lives and experiences of the most inspiring individuals from around the world. Each episode features interviews with fascinating guests who share their insights and wisdom on a variety of topics, including education, impact, motivation, health, and learning. Here are your hosts, Anayet Chowdhury and Vlad Suleiman.
This podcast is sponsored by ArgoPrep, an award-winning educational publisher serving over 1 million students nationwide. If you're a kindergarten to 8th grade teacher or principal, be sure to check out our supplementary workbooks to get your students ready for standardized state testing. We cover all subjects from kindergarten to 8th grade. Use the coupon code AVENUE for a 25% discount off of all purchase orders. Visit us today at argoprep.com/store. Julie, very nice to have you.
It's wonderful to be here. Thank you.
I would love to start the conversation by laying some foundational information, not just for us, but of course our listeners and viewers as well. Can we please first start off with elaborating on the 4 attachment styles? What exactly are they and how they show up in relationships as adults?
Sure. So first, let me start with what attachment actually is, right? So everybody growing up has a relationship. Usually it starts with the earliest caregivers. So there's a quality of that relationship, right? That you learn how to reach for comfort and emotional connection, and you learn how other people respond to your reaches for emotional comfort or connection. And that those relationships set the template for the, your relative feelings of safety in relationships, how willing you are to get vulnerable, show your emotions, how willing you are to, or how confident you feel about other people being able to respond to you. So from that, we develop an attachment style. Most people will retain the same attachment style later through their, romantic relationships as adults. And not always. I mean, it's shiftable, absolutely. And that's a good thing because we can go from having insecure attachments to secure attachments. So if we really, the 3 elements of an attachment style are, what are the nature of the fears you experience in close, I'm going to talk specifically about romantic relationships in this, that's what I specialize in. So the nature of the fears, the way you manage your relationship fears, and the way you reach for connection from your partner, and the way you respond to your partner's bids for connection. So from that, we have 4 different ways of managing attachment, right? And so we're going to start with, I'll tell you about the 3 that, are the less than ideal versions, and then I'll say what we're going for, which is secure attachment. So if you have an anxious attachment, you somehow along the way learn to fear abandonment. either physical or emotional abandonment. And emotional abandonment is the main form of emotional abandonment is emotional invalidation, being told you're too much, your feelings are too much, being rejected or punished if you showed up with a lot of emotions, or just feeling rejected when you show up with a need for your emotions, or bids for connection. And so if you grew up in a situation like that, you probably got used to having to get big or fight for your needs to be met. You have a hard time trusting that your needs will be met. Even sometimes when they are being met, it's still hard to trust that it's actually happening. It's hard to trust that your needs will be met next time. So you just carry all this anxiety in the relationship. Lots of, like I said, getting big, getting loud, desperation to be seen, heard, and understood. And not only the desperation, but feeling really in touch with that desperation and willing to fight for it. But often that fighting comes in ways that actually end up pushing partners away. And then if you have an avoidant attachment, you have the opposite experience. You grew up in a home where you just didn't get any emotional responsiveness. Sometimes it's negative emotional responsiveness, but it wasn't ideal, and it was negative enough that someone with an avoidant attachment learned to just detach from their needs. We call it deactivating their attachment system, right? It's kind of like if you're hungry and you're starving and you're not getting any food, at some point, some people might just be able to shut off their appetite and not feel hungry. So it's like no longer feeling emotional hunger to the degree that you don't even know that you have it or have that capacity anymore. And so someone who with an avoidant attachment, they are going to live in their heads more because that's where they've learned to find comfort and weave their way through life, being really rational, being really reasonable. If we think of anxious attachment going back as, kind of the prime motivator of someone with an anxious attachment in their relationship is close the distance, close the emotional distance, fix problems. Whereas someone with an avoidant attachment, it's ignore problems and just keep things stable. Don't rock the boat. And so, so what happens is, those with anxious attachment and those with avoidant attachment, for reasons I won't go into, are usually drawn to each other. And so we have, it's a kind of an energetic balancing act. And so we have this one partner, the anxious, who's fighting for connection. And we have this other avoidant partner who's sort of trying to keep the peace, keep things from escalating, and keep things from getting too enmeshed. So they sort of balance each other out in this second best kind of way.
Wow. Okay.
Someone with go ahead.
No, that's very interesting. So someone with an avoidant attachment and anxious attachment are paired together fairly well. I mean, obviously there's a lot more other factors, but generally speaking, is that so? Do they balance each other out? Meaning, is it a healthy relationship, or
it's less than ideal? Let me say that, because it's less than ideal. It varies from really dysfunctional, right? It's kind of like
it's a spectrum.
Exactly.
Right.
And so there are people who have an anxious avoidant dynamic that have been married for 80 years and somehow they get by, right? Again, it's not ideal, and then for some people, they're just absolutely miserable.
Over the last year, 86.6% of our regular viewers have not yet hit the subscription button. Your subscription means a lot to us. It's a small gesture on your end and a huge leap forward for our channel. If you wouldn't mind, we would love to ask you, if you found our channel informative and engaging, if you can please hit that subscription button. Your subscription means a lot to us. It allows us to go ahead and continue to put out great content, better guests, and as always, we will always put out 2 episodes per week. Thank you so much.
And how can you determine which type are you or your girlfriend or spouse before starting a relationship?
Well, just by listening to Julie, I can probably tell I hope I'm at the secure attachment side of things, but I guess we'll find out.
Sure.
But it sounds like to me, with my childhood, it sounds like avoidant attachment. And Vlad, you can probably agree because you know me very well. I'm the, you know, I'm
Right.
very rational, reasonable. I don't like to rock the
Mm-hmm.
boat. Wow, this
Yeah.
is all right. So now I'm interested in seeing if it's really avoidment or the secure attachment.
And it's recommended, right, to basically before going into the serious relationships to find out, I mean, what type are you, what type is your girlfriend or boyfriend, and so on, and basically go through all those conversations, right, before making some big steps, let's say.
Yes. Again, I'm going to go with the word ideal, right? Because
Right.
it's not a death sentence if you don't, because you can also work through these things in the context of a relationship. In fact, it's when you're in a relationship, sometimes it's easier to work through it because you are dealing with the live relationship. You're dealing with the triggers organically. Whereas before you go into a relationship, okay, so we come into life, right? We're these little emotional beings and we don't know how to regulate our emotions because we just know to, cry at or cry for what we need, get upset. We have a parent who then creates a relationship with us that helps us learn to manage these big emotions. So first we have the relationship with the earliest caregiver, usually the parent. And from that, we develop a relationship with ourself, right? So that is like how we learn to deal with our own emotions. And the two main categories or three main categories are: one, we get overwhelmed and we get anxious and we try to do all these things to self-soothe. Or two, we just sort of cut off our emotional world and learn to be fulfilled with, being successful, being good at task. Avoidant attached folks are very task oriented. That's how they're getting their emotional needs met. To feel successful and worthy is just in an indirect way. And then those with secure attachment, they have this balance. They can go into a situation with a balance of head and heart, right? They're able to think clearly. Their emotions aren't overwhelming them, but they're also able to connect with themselves emotionally to help inform the decisions that they make in life. And so we have this, attachment with our own selves and how we manage our own feelings, basically. And that's going to inform how we show up in a relationship with a close, romantic partner. And so, Vlad, to go back and answer your question, the work that you can do before you go into a relationship is really a lot of self-work. A lot of what's my relationship like with my emotions? And thoughts too, that comes into it. So, yeah.
Can the attachments change, the type of attachments?
Yes. So most people are going to, like you and on a yet. You're saying I have an avoidant attachment. It comes, the answer comes fairly quickly, right? And we can probably look back at your past and understand why you would have needed to develop more of an avoidant attachment. And again, you're moving towards secure. You are secure, but you can recognize that maybe you've had to work through some of the avoidance in your life.
Right.
But some people, what happens is you come out of childhood, maybe you had a diverse range of relationships with people and you can kind of go either way. And then you get into a relationship with someone who has a really secure attachment. And that helps you feel safe in the world. And you actually start to develop more security. Or you get into a relationship with someone who has a really heavy, anxious attachment. And that's going to trigger your avoidance. Or you get into a relationship with someone who's very avoidant and that triggers your fear. And you want to reach, connect. And you start to feel some of that anxiousness. And the goal here, the work I'm doing, obviously, is to help people develop a secure attachment.
Wow.
So absolutely, it's shiftable. I wouldn't be doing what I do if that weren't the case. So
I have a question here, and I know you focus a lot on relationships or intimate relationships, but obviously a lot of this starts off with early childhood experiences. Maybe you can shed some light into this, but for example, I have a daughter on the way. She's a month away. My wife is due.
Oh,
Are there any?
congratulations.
Thank you.
I
So
have 5 of those, by the way.
5 daughters and 1 son. Is that correct?
Yes,
Yeah,
exactly.
me and my
Good memory.
I have 2 other co-founders. Between us now we have 7 daughters. There are no
Oh my
boys, and
gosh.
but yet
Oh,
girls rule the
wow.
world, and all my cousins are
Yes.
girls.
They
Like,
are.
so. But
That's amazing.
what are some steps or any advice? How do I develop or instill a secure relationship? How do I provide that early childhood experience as someone who's going to have a child?
Okay, so the phrase that I really love to use both with parents and children and with romantic partners is the child version would be connect first, parent second. And so that means that you want to focus on attending to your child's emotional needs in a situation when they're upset, they're triggered, they're uncomfortable, they're sad, something uncomfortable happened at school, or they're upset because they can't have a second piece of cake at the birthday party. First, attend to those emotions, which is see them, understand them. Don't try to change them. You don't want to ever try to, talk your kids out of feeling the way that they do, like either with saying, here, let's go get a cookie instead of be upset that you can't watch the show, or you shouldn't feel that way. Only, we don't get angry in this house, right? So you're holding space for the big feelings, and really just holding their hand through them and validating. I hear you. I know this is so upsetting for you. I get it. I get upset too when I don't get what I want.
Right.
And then, when that's established and you've made space for that piece of their humanity, then you move into, at the same time, we don't throw toys. And so I'm going to have to take this toy away until we can figure out a way not to throw it. Let's talk, let's do something else with this big feeling that you have that's really uncomfortable and painful for you.
Wow.
And same thing with, with couples. It's connect first. I hear what you're saying. I really do. I get your fears about money. You grew up in a home where you didn't have enough of it, and there's a lot of anxiety around that. And I want to help you with that. But at the same time, I have some different ideas too about how to create a budget. And, I need for both of us to kind of meet each other.
Wow. That's really good advice, actually. It's really good advice.
Thank you.
Vlad, I'll pass it over to you.
Glad that's helpful.
Yeah. Is there any foundational aspects or elements in a healthy relationship? Like, okay, this, if you're going to have, then it's not guaranteed, but your relationship going to be much better if you have these elements in your character. Or
I do. Absolutely. I would say it is learning how to be emotionally supportive. That is it all starts from there, right? We
supportive
are
to your
emotionally.
second half.
Exactly.
Emotionally supportive.
And emotionally supportive, right? That's the foundation. Everything comes from an emotionally all the good stuff comes from an emotionally supportive relationship. Cooperation, the ability to solve problems together, the ability to navigate conflict. And again, I circle back to connect first, correct second. And that connection, when I say emotional support, what I mean is helping each other feel really heard, feel understood, feel emotionally validated. That does not mean agreeing with someone's perspective or the way they choose, or choosing to go about managing a problem. You might think this is the worst idea ever. But at the same time, I'm willing to step into your world and empathize with your experience and understand all of your history that kind of brought us to this place where you have the thoughts that you do. I'm willing to step in there and try to really see from your eyes and step into your shoes before I just launch into, here's what I want to do, or, here's my feelings about it. I'm really going to hold your hand in your experience, and vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
And everything good, again, happens from that place.
You know what's interesting? this information that we're speaking about right now, I knew this information, but I think I can do a much better job at being emotionally available because we have a great relationship. But I think that on the emotionally supportive side, I can do a much better job because I'm so quick to be very logical and, you know,
Yeah.
my thought process. Even though what you've just mentioned, I knew about it, and sometimes I'll put in action, but it looks like I have to do a much better job. It's not so simple, right?
I
It's
think I'm doing a very bad job in terms of the being emotional supportive. Can you give like examples? How is it to
yes.
be
And
emotional supportive? Like real
okay.
life example.
Okay. I think, in this, when I get asked this question, honestly, it comes more alive if you give me an example of a moment when
Hmm.
maybe something you and your partner had a miss, you were missing each other. And if you don't want to, that's okay. I can come up with my own example. But Anayet, you said, uh, I go up into my head. I get really reasonable. So can you give me an example of a moment when you noticed that you were doing that? Or you can say right now, yeah, that's one of those moments where I
Yeah,
responded with this really rational.
definitely, without a doubt. So, my wife used to work for a very hyper growth startup company, and she was a corporate recruiter there, and they were experiencing massive growth. And at that time, obviously, there's a lot of miscommunication issues with her managers or something
Hmm.
like that, and
Sure.
so of
Growing
course
pains kind of thing.
she would express these concerns like, hey, like I didn't in my opinion, I just thought, hey, you shouldn't pay any attention to this because they're
Hmm.
so busy and X, Y, and Z. But in hindsight, what I should have done is pause, accept that, because what she's looking to do is vent to me and express how she's
Sure.
feeling. She's not looking for my advice, but the point is, I know that. yet
Hmm.
yet 8 out of 10 times, I won't say 9 out of 10, 8 out of 10 times, I'll fail to recognize that, hey, I should be there first to support her and make sure she's feeling understood and her feelings are valid before I move on to, hey, I understand that 60 minutes from now, hey, by the way, your manager wrote you a 2-word email because they're just so busy and, maybe
Hmm.
they don't, maybe
Sure. Like
that's
trying to
not their
move her
style.
away from the upset.
Right, right,
Yeah.
right.
Okay. So it sounds like you have it covered, that you get, okay, the ideal way to respond to my wife would be, okay, I know this is super frustrating for you. And let me just start with this. I'm really sorry that you're going through that. Can we, how can I help you right now feel, comforted over this? Right now, that doesn't mean that there's no space for advice, because again, once we have that connection built up, maybe it would help her to get a little pep talk. Right.
Mm,
But we want to make sure that we're not putting the cart before the horse, because
mm,
as you have probably learned, when you go in with advice, she gets more agitated
right.
because she's feeling that sense of, like a minor sense of emotional abandonment. You're gone. You've left her spot where she needs to kind of get that comfort, right? And feel
Right.
connected and have that human part, uh, feel connected to. But here's where I want to go with this. What are you hoping for when you give her advice?
Typically, when I would, if I will give advice in a situation, is to ease her stress or frustrations or concerns.
Okay. And that's really commendable and valid, right? Of course, you love her. You don't want to see her hurting or being stressed. And if you can help her move away from those painful emotions, how are you going to feel?
If I can help her,
How will that help you feel better in the world if she feels better in the world?
well, she feels better. I, by default, feel better as well because she's in a happy place or not stressed out
Hmm.
about this specific situation.
Right. So one is your empathy is driving you to want to soothe this person that you love, right? So there's a feeling right there. Two is maybe you get to, the idea is if she's not stressed out, we can connect more, we can watch a movie together or
Right.
whatever, she'll be more available or present. So that's you saying, I want to reach her. I want to feel connected to you. So you're telling me about your own emotional needs. They're there.
Right.
They're there when you try to move her away from her emotions. You're probably feeling some anxiety, right? And you're acting on that anxiety by trying, well, if I can just get her to feel better, then I don't have to sit here and feel some anxiousness. But you're not aware of it because you're just so used to popping right out of your emotions, going right into your head. And so sharing those experiences with your wife will also help her feel more connected to you, because now she's getting to know more about you, which is, this is one of those moments where I get really anxious because you're upset. And then I start to feel anxious, and I have so much empathy for you. And I value the connectedness. And I have this urge to just want to move you away from your emotions. But I'm really trying to do something different here.
Wow.
And what is very interesting is that it's very similar how you're gonna speak with your kids. Because
Yes.
lately I'm speaking with my older one a lot, because she's having some problems with the little ones here and there. Always she's showing emotions 100 times a day. So I feel like I'm speaking nonstop all day with her, explaining how you don't have to take it personal, this and that, everything. So it very reminds me, basically same as you're going to speak with your kid.
Absolutely.
Same empathy that you show to your kids, same should be to your wife. But
yes.
oftentimes, I don't know why. I mean, I'm even speaking for myself. It's much easier to speak with kids than with the wife, because what? Because I'm afraid, or because I feel it's not important, or why is that?
Well, my first answer sometimes there's obviously different dynamics that are driving one fear, right? But as parents, we have this drive to protect our kids. It's not an even relationship. We are so biologically wired and driven to protect them that it can be really easier. Sometimes it can be easier to show up as our best selves for them. Whereas with our partners, there's more of that reciprocal expectation. You're not expecting your child to take care of you emotionally. And if someone is, then that obviously is something that needs to be looked at and addressed. So that expectation of them showing up for us is not there, but with our partners, it is. And so partners can get stuck in a battle of, well, whose needs matter more here? And another, there could be other things that are, driving that. You said something, and I forgot what you said. Can you kind of repeat that second part of the question again? You said it's harder with my wife because
either I'm afraid, or I'm afraid of being judged, or like maybe some childhood problems, of course. It's never without them.
So I'm going to assume then that you probably can relate to having an avoidant attachment. Am I correct about that?
Probably, yep.
Okay. And so that fear of being judged, you probably grew up with messages that you're weak for showing feelings, or somehow you learned somewhere along the way, if you talk about feelings or show them, then that's not acceptable. For some reason you learned it's safer to not go there. And so that shows up with your wife. It's like a belief. And again, I'm, just speaking generally here, this is what I see a lot of, and it doesn't necessarily mean it's relatable to you, but that fear is there that, first of all, maybe I feel threatened by the emotional part of myself, because I view it as weaker, not manly, or not strong. And so, the belief is if I show up with that part to my wife, then I'll be judged or rejected, even though you rationally might not really believe that. Rationally, you probably can sit here and say to me, hey, my wife wouldn't reject me or judge me. Right. But that fear is so deep-seated. And this is where, the willingness to be vulnerable comes in. which is I'm willing to recognize that I'm scared right now, but I also want to make these positive changes in my relationship and pull my wife into me. And so I'm willing to do something new, even though it's really scary.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a fear that you can express to her, which is, I'm learning about emotional connection and talking about my feelings. And what I'm noticing is that I'm really scared. I'm afraid that if I show up with that side to you, maybe you'll judge me. And you've
Right.
just talked about a feeling.
So it's all also comes to the fear of judgment. And also a lot of advice that I give, I mean, to my wife, to everybody, isn't everything also starts with self-confidence? If you're going to be really self-confident, you will not be afraid to speak with anybody about your feelings, about your problems. It's a good thing to be self-confident.
Okay.
Because if you're going to be self-confident, you're not going to be hurt by someone else, by their feelings or by their judgments or by anything. That's why you will not be scared to speak about your feelings.
Yes, I would add a little spin to that. And I would say that it's not that you won't be hurt, but you can handle being hurt. You
Right.
can deal with the hurt. And when you learn how to handle hurt and deal with hurt, then paradoxically, you feel hurt less often because you're not afraid of it.
Wow,
Right.
what a great conversation. Seriously.
I actually also want to speak about how social media affects it. So with the rise of the social media and our heavy consumption, is there any new challenges that a couple can face?
I think so. I think probably the biggest challenge is that social media is giving us an opportunity to experience second best versions of connection, meaning that we get these some sense of emotional needs being met on social media. Otherwise, nobody would be doing it
Right.
if you didn't feel distracted, stimulated, whatever. And so it's not as fulfilling as human relationships, but it's enough to keep us from learning to really navigate fulfilling. It's kind of like lazy emotional connection. You don't really have to work at it, like junk food, right? It tastes good, but it doesn't really nourish you. So you
Right.
just kind of keep eating more. And, as opposed to a real healthy meal, you're not going to get that instant satisfaction, but it's going to keep you more fulfilled and nourished and healthier. And, just speaking from personal experience, a lot of times it's not so much social media, but I listen to audiobooks and I like to play free cell. Like that's how I zone out.
Yeah.
Is at night. I'm like, oh, I gotta just like decompress, and I'll just listen to my audiobook and play free cell at the same time. And so then my husband will come to bed. And what I'm noticing is that it's hard for me to put it down when really just cuddling with him for 2 seconds is a connection, and it's
Right.
healthier than laying there facing the other side, the wall
Right.
with my phone. And yet it's so compelling to sit there and, just like the rat with pellets. And
Right.
so I think that, that's not social media, but a lot of people are doing that with social media, just scrolling, and neglecting their real relationships that are really going to lead to a happier, healthy life, your family life, the whole gamut. But I want to add to that. I think there's an upside to it, which is accounts like mine and, other self-help accounts, the podcasts you are doing, that there's so much good information out there now that people just didn't have access to,
Yeah, that's a
30,
very
20,
good point.
30, 50 years ago. Yeah, I think that's a, good part. So it's a matter of learning to accentuate the positive and really manage that negative part, be aware of how this might be getting in your way.
At what point do you think it's we should realize, I mean, by we, I mean like everybody, that we need to go and have a counsel? Because usually everybody is just waiting, it's boiling, and it fight starts, and then maybe they will realize, okay, let's go and talk with the expert,
Well, okay. Okay, I'll give you the ideal and then the second best. Okay, so the ideal is that every couple, once they decide we're committed to each other, we want to have a long-term relationship, goes and gets 5 sessions of the right kind of couples therapy. There's different, I'm a big proponent of emotionally focused therapy. You go and you get 5 sessions and you learn about your conflict patterns in this, what I call a negative cycle, which is this cycle that comes alive, especially between someone with an avoidant attachment and an anxious attachment. It becomes the repetitive pattern that is consistent among their fights, even if they're fighting over parenting one day or what restaurant to eat at the next day. There's a consistent pattern there. If couples can stay on top of that, learn about it, and learn how to not go there and learn about how to repair when they do go there, they're going to be set up for success, more so than someone that, instead of learning to prevent it, has to heal it. But that's okay too, because now we have a plan B. Plan B is, are you noticing that the overall climate of your relationship, you're feeling unheard, misunderstood, disconnected, invalidated? And if you're starting to think, okay, this, even the strongest of couples are going to have isolated interactions where they feel unheard or invalidated or unappreciated. Right. But strong couples are able to repair that and get back to their safe climate, their secure climate. If you're noticing that the climate is deteriorating, then that would be a time to go seek help. Or if you're noticing that the negative interactions and feelings are starting to outweigh the positive, then that's another good sign that it's time to go get help. And the sooner couples get help, the quicker the therapy is. So
right.
I am, as a therapist, and I don't know that there are any couples out there that can't benefit from 5 sessions of really high quality couples therapy.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, you're the expert, first of all, but yeah, I definitely agree with you. On that thought, congrats on your new book. I know it's coming out in just a couple of months. I would love for you to share a little bit more about what readers can expect to learn from this book, and who is this book for? I know this book is for me because I'd love to learn more about this, but who, in general, who's this book for, and what can we expect to learn?
Okay, so the book is for anybody who is in a relationship or would like to be in a future relationship that wants to learn how to create a healthy, secure, harmonious relationship.
So that's everybody.
Pretty much, right? So what the book does is I really, take a good amount of time to explain attachment theory. Why is this so important? It's trendy right now, but it's not a trend. I mean, attachment theory has been around since the 1940s, and we've been using it for decades to help people heal. So what is it? In my opinion, it's the closest science has ever come to explaining how relationships work on a very intricate, tangible, workable level. So the book, again, at the beginning, we're going to talk about attachment theory. I'm going to explain the different attachment styles, how they came to be, how they show up in your relationship. And then what happens is these insecure attachment styles turn into negative cycles between partners. And so my job as a therapist is to help you learn to interrupt those cycles, help you learn to prevent them, help you learn to heal them. And so basically I'm walking a couple through the process of therapy that I would do with a couple in my private practice. And, if you're single and you're hoping to have a healthy relationship in the future, just walking through that process is going to help you really understand what this looks like, what it feels like, and how to get there. And a big piece of it is learning these emotional support skills. And that's a big part of the book is, hey, here's what you need to be doing, emotional validation. Here's how you do it. Here's a lot of examples of what it's not, of what it is. And
I have an interesting question while you're explaining this. How about, and I'm sure you've seen it before, but in a toxic relationship, right? Are there sessions where that there's a toxic relationship that goes on that needs to end? Like, how do you approach that as a therapist? I know we're getting a little bit off topic here, perhaps, But
No, it's a
and
great
I'm only
question.
asking that because there's I'm sure everyone knows of at minimum one individual who's in a very toxic relationship. I know plenty of people, and some of them are super smart. Some of them,
Yeah.
so that's my question. Yeah. So as a therapist, how do you approach that?
Well, okay. So what I need to do is, I think what you're asking, and correct me if I'm wrong, is how do you know when it's a communication problem or just incompatibility?
Yeah.
Just,
Yes.
okay. Yes. Well, you never know if it's incompatibility until you clean up the communication. You
Hmm.
have to clean that part up first so we can rule it out. Because
Okay.
a lot of times it's not incompatibility. It's we are compatible, but we've been fighting for so long. We've been tearing each other apart for so long
Hmm.
that we just feel like enemies at this point. And so if I can clean up that communication, help them start relating to each other in a healthy way and start to heal some of those old wounds, and they're still sitting there going, okay, we talk to each other in a healthy way now, but we still just really don't connect. We really don't have the same interests. We want different things out of life. Then that might be time to consider, what do we want to do here going forward?
Mm.
Um, and, so if the couple is so distressed, meaning as a partnership, their relationship is so distressed, or individually, they have so many, maybe mental health issues or personality disorder issues that they are so internally distressed that they can't clean up the communication, then we have a big problem.
Mm.
Because that's at the point where you would say, okay, this is toxic, because not only are we miserable, but we've been trying to make changes and they're not landing. We're not able to. I'm able to, but my partner's not able to, or my partner's able to, but I'm not able to, or both of us aren't able to. And there's no hope. That's the point at
Mm.
which it's time to say, what do we want our futures to look like?
Mm. Okay.
But it's a difficult question to answer, but there are some people, what we say in the line of work that I do is it really requires vulnerability to do new things before you can make changes in your relationship. And it also requires the ability to be able to self-regulate,
Mm.
because you can't make new moves unless you can, get your nervous system into a place where you are capable of that. And some people they've had trauma histories or what have you, and they just can't self-regulate enough
Right.
to start making changes in the relationship. And once we can bring self-regulation to the table, and I have two partners who are able to say, okay, before I go into this reactive, place where I keep repeating the same behaviors over and over that aren't working for me, I'm going to step back. I'm going to take some breaths. I'm going to try to find a grounded place inside of me, and I'm going to try to do something new. Then if they can get to that place, then they can start to co-regulate each other, meaning
Okay.
yeah. You want me to explain that, or does that make?
No, that was no. Honestly, that was very insightful, Julie. Again, this has been truly a wonderful conversation, and I'm really looking forward to reading your new book. Actually, I'm going to pass over the last two questions over to Vlad over here.
Great.
Yeah. Actually, I wanted to add to your point on that with the toxic relationship. One of the nice points is that sometimes people enjoy being in a toxic relationship.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
And
I don't
even
know if
the
enjoy is the word, but yes, keep going with this line of thought. It's very important.
yeah, they enjoy this relationship. Then if they end this relationship, the next one again is toxic, and then again is toxic, and they never go out from this circle, just simply because they enjoy it. They need this. It's like their driving force of life to be either a victim or being the one who is, making this relationship toxic.
Sure. So what I would say to that is it's less about enjoying, and it's more about trying to connect in the only way that they know how. They're trying to get this emotional connection. If they don't know how to do it with vulnerability and emotional, healthy emotional intimacy, they're at least going to get it with dysfunctional emotion. It's better to fight than it is to feel alone and disconnected. So they sort of get addicted to fighting, because that's when they actually feel emotionally engaged. And people are just so desperate for emotional engagement that they'll substitute drama, for lack of a better word, for the intimacy that they aren't able to get. And then they continue this pattern because they just don't know what else to look for. They have dysregulation problems themselves. And most people just don't want to be alone. So they'll choose to be in a dysfunctional relationship over. Exactly.
And really the only way to fix that is to get professional help, right? I mean, or by some miracle, if you have a really strong couple who can get you out of that cycle, or that vicious cycle that they've been experiencing. Is that correct?
Yeah, I mean, I think, for the most part, if someone is that, high level of escalation, high level of dysfunction kind of within and in relationships outside of themselves, then probably it's going to take some professional help,
right,
or just a lot of really focused self-work. But yes, if you have someone who has trauma and lots of really hard things that they've gone through in life, and you put them with someone who's really secure, whether that honestly is a really close friend or a mentor or a therapist or even a partner, that can help them feel safe. And when people feel safe in relationships, growth starts to happen. Because people who don't feel safe, they're expending a tremendous amount of energy trying to stay safe in their relationships. So when they feel safe and there's healthy connection, healthy boundaries in place, it frees up their energy to grow as humans. And that's why the parent-child relationship is so important, because when children are stressed by dysfunctional relationships with their parents, it takes away their ability to focus on their own growth.
Wow.
Interesting. Julie, I have one last question to you that we ask every single guest. Who has been the strongest and most inspiring person in your life, and what lessons have you learned from them?
Oh gosh. Well, personally, it would definitely be my husband, but I'm going to say professionally, it would be my mentor, George Faller, who is, he's a couples therapist. He has a very interesting story. He actually was, before he became a couples therapist, he was a New York firefighter. He went into the buildings in 9/11 and rescued people. And then he decided to become a therapist shortly after that. And he has taught me literally everything I know. He is just a beacon of wisdom and master therapist. And I would not be able to be sitting here saying what I'm saying right now or doing what I'm doing without him.
So Julie, thank you so much for sharing that insight with us. That's the last question, is something that we generally love asking, is because we get to get a short insight into your life, whether it's a parent or a mentor or a teacher that has changed someone's life. Julie, thank you for all the incredible work that you do. Again, I do want to let our viewers know and listeners know that, again, Secure Love is coming out on January 30, 2024. You can pre-order it. I believe it's on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, all the traditional channels for pre-order. Is that correct?
Yes. It's all over. There's a UK. It's going to be in different languages and such.
I did actually see that. I did see that. That's it's so on the same day you're actually releasing in different languages?
Some different language. Yes. I don't know if it's the exact same day because it's different publishing companies around the world. Like, so Belgium has a different, not Belgium. Netherlands has a different publishing company, and the Latin speaking world, Catalan, randomly.
Wow.
Yeah. So so I need to find out exactly if they're all released on the same day. I think they probably are, though.
Well, that is very exciting news. Publishing is, I mean, we publish in-house. We are a publisher. That's really what we do. But we don't publish third party. Everything we do is in-house. But so anytime a new title comes out, it is very exciting. And I'm sure it is very exciting for you as well.
It is, yeah.
And before I let you go, I do have, please share with our viewers, because I do know that you run your own clinic, your website, or any other information on where they can find you.
Sure. Well, I have my Instagram account is kind of my hub. That's where this all started. So it's the secure relationship. Look for the blue check. I do have imposter accounts, and there's a little highlight right there on the front. My main page that says "Start Here," and that puts out, like the Instagram book version of all of this information I'm sharing. So it kind of linearly, I put my posts in to kind of help people explain what I'm doing here. I have Julie Mennano Therapy, and then I have the securerelationship.com, and that's where you can, I have a team of relationship coaches. They're actually all licensed therapists, but they're not working as therapists for the secure relationship coaching. They're working as relationship coaches. If anyone's interested in this type of work, they're all highly trained in emotionally focused therapy for couples, which is the attachment based model of couples therapy.
Julie, it's been a wonderful time speaking with you today. Thank you so much for dedicating your generous time. We've learned a lot, and truly, it's excellent work that you do, because we do need people to have a secure attachment. I think I'm in the middle, but I don't think I'm there yet, actually. So I will most certainly be picking up your book. Thank you so much for all you do.
You're so welcome. You're very welcome. Thanks for having me.